Hey everyone, this is Shai with you. I wanted to take a few minutes over here to demystify a few thoughts and processes of the word called order flow, which is what we do every day over here at VTrend. Now, order flow, as you know, is basically demand and supply. Demand and supply seen on one chart, okay, is what is called order flow, right? Now, it is a simple candlestick blown open. There is no technical information over here about anything else, okay, beyond it being a candle or a bar or just about, okay, any other visualization tool you would look at. So what really happens is in order flow, it is your candle, okay, which you have thrown open and you're looking to see what is happening, okay, between the high and the low of that candle. The open and the close of that candle, and essentially, okay, what is moving within that candle, right? So if you take two candle bars, any two candles or any two bars of the same range, the same high and the same low, and you plot them on a chart, and they are the exact same thing, and let's just say, okay, they are 1 minute apart from each other, and you plot the open of one lower than the high, then by default and our understanding is that the color of that candle would be green. And of the same high and the same low and the same range for the other candle, if you plot, okay, the open higher than the close, then the color of that candle would be red, right? So what really happens over here is the exact same range, okay, but the movement within that candle determines that color green and that color red. Now what we do in order flow is we strip this color out. All right, we remove that veil, we remove, okay, that color red, that color green, and allow you a look inside that bar, inside that candle, and to see exactly, okay, what is moving between that high and the low, and what is moving, okay, between the open and the close. And that is what is called order flow. So it is a market mechanism at work. It is a transparent look at what is actually happening at the exchange, the buying and the selling, which is happening out over there, right? So don't think of it as an indicator. Don't think of it, okay, as an add-on tool. Don't think of it as anything else. It simply is not that. It is a candle stripped open, right? It's a candle, okay, whose color has been taken out. We do not, okay, remove that candle entirely. We just put it on the left side, but instead, okay, we focus on what is happening, okay, within that candle, within that bar. And that, my friends, okay, is what the order flow is all about. Since we are talking about order flow, I want to talk to you a little bit more, okay, about this term, okay, which we use in order flow called COT, commitment of trade. Now, if order flow is demand and supply, then COT is the net of that demand and supply. There is nothing else to it, right? Everything is working on demand and supply. And then if demand and supply are put together in a candle, okay, and if you net out that difference, okay, and that is the volume candle, if you net out that difference, the difference between the demand and the supply is what is called the COT of the bar, the commitment of trade within that bar. So if the demand is higher than supply in that particular bar, then that COT is green. And if the supply is higher than demand in that bar, then the COT is red, right? And a string of these COTs put together in 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10-minute bars, you put them together, you immediately understand if that price is moving higher, is COT a participant to that move higher. And when price is moving higher, but COT is, okay, not there, that means it's telling you that there is no new demand in this up move, okay, which we are seeing. And likewise, okay, if price is moving lower, but COT is not showing you excess supply coming in, it is again telling you, okay, that there is no supply, okay, which is coming in into that price move. And this, if you follow as a process over a period of time, and we insist you, okay, you look at COT over a period of 10 bars, then that will tell you exactly, okay, what the market is doing at every single point in time, right? So order flow, simply demand and supply. COT is the net of demand and supply. I hope, okay, this clarifies, and I hope, okay, this is helpful. Thank you for listening in.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and I hope the audio is clear. Great. So, welcome back to the Monday 5 p.m. session, and let's start with what we generally do, have a review of what happened last week in Nifty spot and Bank Nifty spot, and then take it one step forward with looking at what the auction has done today, and with respect to that, what we can expect for the week ahead. And we'll also cover the Nifty futures and the Bank Nifty futures profile as well as order flow chart, and look at some option examples also in order flows for today. So coming to the weekly report, we have the unmerged profile, just like what we generally do of last week's Nifty week individual days. So the Monday was a trend day down. We continued the imbalance which was started the previous week. In fact, the imbalance, the first sign of high being made was on 27th, and after which 30th was a drive down. And we had mentioned how the opening of the week giving a drive down is telling us that the bias should be on the downside, and we made a good trending week down, and that imbalance continued on Monday, because Monday we got an A period selling tail and we drove lower, but we made those lows in the I period, after which we got a good pullback. So that was the first sign that the sellers were booking profit, because we did not make any new lows into the close. So the imbalance was all showing signs of getting over. And then the next day we got an A period buying tail. Yes, this A period buying tail came inside previous day's range, so it was not as effective as it would have been from a new zone, but still, nonetheless, this was still a initiative buying tail. And what we did was we got accepted in this 10-day profile, and we took out whatever sell side references were there. We filled up this profile. So, so this was clearly telling us that now we are back to balance mode. The sellers have booked out, and the buyers are trying to get a small foothold into the auction. So this was a 2-day balance which we formed, after which we probed higher, took off this selling tail of Monday, and made this new highs of 25234. This was just below that weekly selling side sell side reference, and what we did was we made a neutral extreme day down. So this zone was showing us that the supply was coming back here. So once we did this, again on Thursday we left a failed auction at 25134, which reconfirmed that now the sellers are trying to take control over. But what happened on Friday was we formed a narrow range profile. We tried to extend lower, but we did not. We stopped right at this POC of 24920. So if we, in case, I'll just pull on the profile charts so that we can. So if we unmerge this weekly profile, so these 2 days, you can see how we stopped right at the 24920 on Friday. So it was telling us that the buyers who had come in on this day were defending this zone. Here, definitely we got supply coming back. And if I unmerge this previous week's profile, we can see how the highs of last week was getting stalled right at this important halfback of 4th of October, which was again a neutral extreme day down. So we left a selling tail here. The supply was coming back, but we are not able to break below this. And if we merge the first 2 days of last week, because the value was overlapping and it was like the second day was filling up the profile of the first day, we have the 2-day composite POC at 24910. So as long as this was holding, we were not completely bearish, because this was a buy side level. It was a dual auction last week. It was not a auction which was completely dominated by the sellers like what had happened in the previous week. So here we had to mark the buy side levels as well as the sell side levels, and we had to see what the seller or the buyer is doing at those references. So when the seller was not able to break below this 24920, it was telling us that this zone is more dominated by the buy side players. So today at the open, this was our first reference. In fact, what we did on Friday was we formed a kind of a B-shaped profile with a very prominent POC at 24965. And if we look at the weekly profile of last week, we had mentioned this in the report and we had put it up on X also, that it has formed a nice Gaussian curve. So you can see previous week's profile, which is showing us a nice balance over the 5 days of auction which happened. And we closed right in the middle at the POC of 24965. So it was very clear that above this POC we would be bearish, we would be bullish, and we would look to take off this value area high and then probe higher towards the highs of previous week. And we would be looking for downside if we sustain below this POC of 24965. So even in our report for the hypos of today, 24965 was our first reference on the downside. We had to stay below this for a probe lower for the auction to, for the sellers to get some advantage. And the objective was that 24910, which we saw the 2-day composite VPOC. And then we had a failed auction at 25134, which was the 180R was the lower objective. On the upside, 24979, which was the pullback high of Friday, was our first reference. And then we had the sell side tail of 25024 from 11th of October. So this was our reference on the upside. And what we did today, I'll increase the TPO size a bit. So what we did today was we opened well above this POC and also above the selling tail of Friday. So that was telling us that the seller who tried to force the auction lower on Friday was being taken out. And we had this initiative buying tail. So when we were above previous POC and have taken out the selling tail, it was very clear that this is an open drive to the upside. And the range also got extended. We went on to get above this value area, weekly value area high in the initial balance itself. So once the initial balance was over, our reference would have been this 8 TPOs halfback of 25055 and then this base of the buying tail. What we did was today we could not extend higher in the D period. So in fact the C and D period made inroads into the morning tail singles, but we left a pullback low at 25073. So the selling tail, the buying tail of the morning, the initial balance was tested, but the buyers were coming back to defend it. So till the point this halfback was not taken out, we were expecting that the buyers will hold this zone. And from this pullback low of 25073, it went on to make a range extension to the upside. And we went on to tag that failed auction. If I unmerge this weekly profile, we can mark those failed auctions. So this was that seaside uh, play which happened on 10th and we got a failed auction there. So we went on to get above this failed auction. But again, as the 9th of October was also a clear sell side dominated profile, we were getting supply coming back. So we can see how the F and G TPOs were forming similar highs. So this is right at this pullback high of H and at the scene of crime of that neutral extreme day down. So when we are holding the sell side levels, we need it to be uh, careful with the longs. So from here, what we have done today is it has again become a truce because the buyer is holding his level which he entered in the morning, but he's not able to take off on the upside, whereas the seller is given up the levels which he had marked on Friday last week and also the Thursday, and this FA also was revisited. But this scene of crime of 25199 would be our reference going forward. You can see how the eTPO and DTPO halfback is at 25199 and that will be a reference on the upside for tomorrow. So what we have done today is formed a P-shaped profile. And start of the week, we have got an initiative buying tail. And if we look at the weekly profile, as we always maintain that the start of the week is an important cue for the entire week. So as long as we are holding this AP rate singles, we can look for upside probes. What would be the references? 25199, which we just saw on the daily chart. That will be our first reference. And then we need to take off this swing high of 25234. And then we can have a entry into this weekly profile of from of 30th September to 4th of October. So we have this 25272 as one reference, and then we can fill up this zone. We have the zone singles from this 25630 to 25730. So that is a zone where we can look the auction to keep rising in case we are the buyers continue to dominate this week. But how will that happen? The first thing would be we will have to remain above this POC of today 25122 P-shape profile. The POC becomes the important reference for the next open. So above the POC we can expect more initiative buying to come, and whatever shorts have come in today, they could be forced to come get out. So if we sustain above this POC, we can look for more short covering and a continuous probe on the upside. Whereas below this, we will be neutral below the POC with expectation of buyers coming back to defend this AP rate singles. So because this POC is also near the value area high of the weekly profile. So in case we sustain below this POC, there is a chance of the 80% rule also playing out in the weekly value, because it is a Gaussian profile and we have a nice balance. So with then again, this will become our objective, the POC and the value area low of last week. So this is how we are placed in spot, and these references would be updated in the hypos for tomorrow, which we'll put up on the weekly report, and you will have them marked with tomorrow's date here. So you can make use of that for tomorrow's auction and accordingly look for some good trades. So this is the chart which we had in the morning for today's hypos. So as you can see, we opened above this first bullish hypo of 25978, and then we took off these objectives of 25023, 25083, and 25134. So this 25199 will be our reference on the upside, and the immediate reference for tomorrow would be this MTPO high and this pullback high of 25148. So 25148, if we are sustaining above this, we are looking for 25199 and 25232. So on the downside, below 25122, we will be looking for a test of this 25073, and then if we break this and the lows of yesterday, then we can look for 24965 and 24910, the 2-day VPOC which we had seen. So that is how we are placed in Nifty spot. Let us now have a look at what the Bank Nifty spot did last week. So Bank Nifty was also a similar case. We had a huge trend day down profile on Monday, but as we saw in Nifty, the lows were made in the ITPO, and the I period also left a responsive buying tail. So this was a 313 profile also, though it was a trend day, which was very clearly telling us that the sellers are now booking profits because we have a good tail at the lows. And then this was followed with a buying tail in the initial balance on Tuesday, which uh, ended up as a short covering P-shape profile, but it was still telling us that the buyers now are slowly inching their way back into the auction. So 9th, the Wednesday was a day where we made an attempt to probe higher, made a range extension to the upside, but this A period selling tail of Monday was not been able to be taken out. So what the Bank Nifty spot did was confirmed a FA here. The highs on Wednesday was 51707. So we got a failed auction which was confirmed, and from that failed auction we got the 180R move lower. Although the failed auction was not able to do much more than what the 180R objective was, the one reason for that was we are not able to sustain below this IBL of Wednesday, which was the condition for that failed auction to remain in play. So when we were not able to sustain below this, it was very clear that the sellers are not able to do a good job on in this zone. So what we did in Bank Nifty was we formed a nice balance profile on the weekly. You can see the value area has been overlapping on all 5 days of the week. So the weekly profile is a nice composite with a very prominent POC at that 51064. And just we had closed above this POC. So in Nifty we had closed right at the POC. So that POC was our reference to be bullish or bearish for today's open. And because at open we were above that POC, we were bullish. But in Bank Nifty we had closed well above this POC, and we had Friday's POC at 51166. So Friday was actually a double distribution kind of a profile where we had left an extension handle. This scene of crime was there, and that pullback in the IP rate stalled right at that initial balance. So it was more kind of telling us that the sellers were holding this zone. But on the weekly profile, we knew that the POC was much lower, and the buyers have come in this day. So this POC 51011, we even spoke about this in the Thursday session of how Nifty spot was building TPOs at 25,000, the round number, and Bank Nifty spot was doing the same at 51,000. So the expiry weekly settlement was looking to be near these big round numbers of 51,000 and 25,000. So that is where it had built a base, and you can see how we were holding that POC. We had an AP rate buying tail on Thursday, and on Friday when we made that probe lower, we did break below this, but we were not able to sustain below that 51,000. So which is why the weekly profile was a nice balanced profile with lower value, but the close was above the POC. So as long as we were staying above this 51166 Friday's POC and this weekly POC, we were looking for a upside. Upside in the sense we could have filled up this upper side of weekly profile and look to take off this selling tail. So these were our hypos for today. On the downside, Friday's POC was the first hypo, and if we would have broken that prominent weekly POC of 51064 would have been our lower reference. So, but as we opened well above this and even above this 51194, which was our first reference on the upside to be bullish in Bank Nifty, let us see what we have done today. I'll again increase the TPO size. So you can see how we had an open drive up in Bank Nifty spot. So how can we call it an open drive up? Because it was well above previous day's reference, the POC of 51166, and we had taken out that hypo, which we had the reference of 51283, which was the 11th October pullback, halfback. So when we are taking out some sell side references in the A period itself, it is telling us that the opposite party is now strong. And you can see how we made a clean swipe above this weekly value and left an A period buying tail there. So now after the A period was over, this value area high of previous week would have been our support. And any entry into this, we could have expected the buyers to come back, but in fact it never came back lower to test this, and we went on to test this AP rate selling tail and then make range extension in the C and then in the E. So we scaled above the weekly highs of last week, and then the pullback low which we made took support right at that B period BTPO halfback of 51661. So we have left a pullback low at 51669 in the I period, and then it was forming a P-shaped profile, but it gave a very small mini spike high into the close. So what will be our references on the upside? In Bank Nifty, if I unmerge this weekly profile of, so you can see this 4th of October has got lot of sell side references, and our first of our objective today on the upside above this 41283 was sorry 51283 was 51435, which was 11th October CTPO halfback, and then we had the scene of crime at 51583 and the failed auction of 51707. So we went on to negate that failed auction. This was the failed auction from 9th of October. We took that out, and we even took out the selling tail from 7th, and which was also last week's high. So, but what we have done here is we have stalled near this halfback of 4th of October, which was a big neutral extreme day down. So the seller had put their stamp on this day. So there, this is the zone which we will have to trade very carefully. And this CTPO halfback of 51911 was our higher objective, but we made a high of I think 51894 today. So this is a very small spike, but still the spike rules will be in play tomorrow. So the spike is from this 51837, I think, the highs of K. So that will be our reference on the upside for open tomorrow. If we are above this 51838, we would be bullish, and we will be looking for a tag of these references. 52024 I think is one scene of crime here, the D period lows, and then we can look for a probe above this 4th of October profile and a test of this selling tail and this swing high of 3rd of October. So this is as far as the upside is concerned in Bank Nifty spot. Whereas on the downside, as I mentioned, the P-shape profile will have the POC as the important reference. But although we have closed well above the POC, and I think the close was at 51817 in spot. So 51835 will be the reference on the upside, which we will have to sustain for a probe higher. On the downside, 51728, the POC would be the reference along with this pullback low of 51669. So holding these two levels, we can expect the range to continue higher. But if we break this, then we will have to look for a test of there is a very good chance of we getting a test of this 51556 and this 8 TPO's halfback of 51413. So these two references would be the very important references for this week, and as long as these are held, we can look for a week which is looking to probe higher on the in the coming sessions. So that is how we are placed in spot in Bank Nifty. Weekly profile has started on a bullish note. We have an A period buying tail moving away from previous week's value. So we don't need this as our reference. We can take this as our reference, which is in sync with the halfback of today. So as long as this 51556 is holding, we can look for the auction to continue higher. If this is broken, then we give up the bullish bias, and then we look for a balance in this upper portion of previous week's profile. So this is how we are placed in the spot. We will have these hypos updated in the report, and you can make use of them in tomorrow's auction also. So we have this daily chart with the KRLs, the key reference levels, which we mark as the hypos which are given. So you can see how we opened well above these two references. We took off this 51435 and we went on to scale above this 51795, stalled right at this 51911 level. So this was the uppermost objective of today, which we had almost hit, and this was because the open was a strong one. So when we have a strong open, then because this is a spot chart, we don't have the VWAP in this, but in futures, we'll now shift to the futures chart. I will start with the Nifty futures. So in futures, when we have a strong open, and how do we know we have a strong open? Because we have the volumes, and when I talk about volumes, we have the order flow chart also. So we mix both the profile as well as the order flow, and then come to a conclusion of what the volumes are looking like and what the order flow signal is showing us. and if they are in sync. So you can see how the profile chart, we have opened well above this POC of previous day, which was at 25050, and we have taken out VWAP right at the open. So I'll just show you the 15-minute order flow chart to have a look of what the opening volumes were, and then we'll see how what kind of trades we could have taken for today. So this is the closing uh, bars of Friday, and you can very clearly see how at the close we had big greens coming into the auction. So that even caused the POC to shift lower. That means the profit booking was there and there was no sell side carry. So it was no wonder that we opened above this POC, and you can see how we have zeros on the lower end, and we easily scaled above this highs of Friday's session. And not only scaled above that, once we scaled above that, we did not come back into this, and we got this big huge buyer of 2500 contracts at 25160 at the start of the second 15-minute bar. So when we are looking like a when it looks like a drive up, because this was a low open is equal to low start at 25060 today, and we remained above VWAP all the time, and then we got this big buyer which confirmed that we are looking for more upside. So what was the upside objective in Nifty futures? We were looking for a tag of this failed auction of 25267 from 10th of October, the same level which we were looking at in spot also. So when we look at the order flow, it very clearly tells that what kind of trades we need to go in for. So here you can see how we have got zeros in the middle of the green bar, and we have a big buyer here. So this is definitely telling us that the buyers are in full control, and with this as our reference 25150, we could remain long for a tag of this 25267. But what happened in the B period was we hit this high of 25248, but what we saw on the sell side, zeros on the sell side at the lows, we were seeing the opposite on the top. We are getting zeros on the buy side at the top, and we had some big sell side numbers stacked up. So what we were seeing was profit booking, because this was more an RS, responsive selling pattern. So once we have a RS, it is only telling us that the buyers are booking profits. So we just need to lighten our longs. If we are long, book profits and trail our positions to cost. And what we did was we made a dip to VWAP, and this dip to VWAP you can see so clearly. When we made this low at VWAP, we've got zero on the sell side, and this is just above this big buy side level of 25160. So when you're getting this kind of a order flow signal, immediately we can look for a trade to get back into the main trend. Why? Because the open was a strong one. Open was a open drive up, and we are staying above the previous day's range, and we are getting this big buyer just above the previous day's range. So with this as our reference, this dip was a buy. Unless we get an IS at VWAP, we were looking for upside range extensions in Nifty today. Although we did not get a big range extension as such, but what the buyer did at the start, he defended that zone. So this will continue to be a good reference to this 25190, the RB which we got at the VWAP test will be a good important reference for tomorrow, along with this 25160. So what we did was, when we made that range extension in the F, you can see how we got this big seller, 2000 lot seller. This seller could be again the buyer who had entered here booking out, but we cannot be sure about that. But what the order flow is telling us, it is showing us RS, responsive selling. So we would, for us to go long, we will need an IS. To go short, we'll need an IS. So that we have not got, and this is just an RS bar. So we will just hold on and again look at seeing what the auction does at this VWAP reference and this NPOC of 25190. So you can see how the dip again in the afternoon, this IP rate dip, we got an RB right at the same place. We tested VWAP And the VWAP test, again on the sell side, we are getting zeros. So this was again a re-entry, although we are not extending higher, but very clearly we are seeing that the VWAP is being defended. So just like how we got this dip and the RB of this was held in this, there were two cases where we could have looked to get back into long options. I'll come to an example of the 24,800 call, which we had traded in the room also, and we will see how the order flow gave us good entry points, not just at the open but also in this test of VWAP. So this was very clearly telling us that again, if we are holding VWAP, we can again look for a test of this IB hedge, and which was also the value area high. So that is what we did, and we went on to make a high right at the IB hedge. So what we have done is the POC shifted higher, and this will again close as a P-shape profile. So this is what our reference would be for tomorrow. 25220 would be the level to watch. In case we are sustaining above this, we would be bullish, and below this we will look for a test of this buy side references of 25190 and 25160. So let us now have a look at the 24,800 call. In fact, that was at the open, and after which we had shifted to the 25,000 call because it was more in the money call. So let's start with the 24,800 and see what the signals were in order flow from the start. So I'll just switch it to the starting of today so that we can see what the signals were and see what were the trades which we could have taken based on what we saw in Nifty futures. So this is how we opened this 24,800 call. So you can see at the open we got this big RB below the VWAP at 274, and this was that bar where we got that big buyer. So the option writers who were getting into call options were forced to come out because of that big buyer which we saw in futures. And you can see the zeros in this bar here. So this 942 bar was a very clear sign that you need to get into a long side trade in this 24,800 call. And what would be our reference? These zeros in the middle of the bar, because we have closed well above this POC, well above this VWAP. This POC would be our immediate 324, and the zone of zeros would be the support. So immediately we have got a follow through, and this was a trade which personally even I had taken, and we had shared in the room also. So we're looking for a target of 400 in this, but it was important to keep trailing this and not let a uh, winning trade get into a loss. So this 324 I think has not been tagged even into the close and will be an important reference. So just like how we got that 25160 reference in Nifty futures, we got this 324 in the call. So as long as this is holding, and whenever we get a dip back to VWAP, we can use that opportunity to uh, take a long position in this. So you can see how this is where the 1042 dip we got, left an RB just above VWAP, and this NPOC line of 324 which was not tagged. So this was a perfect re-entry point where it was supporting the strong open, and this was, we even spoke about this in the room, and this was a very low risk setup. So we can look for, once we get this uh, RB, and you can see here multiple times it was showing us that it is being defended. This again was holding. We went on to make new highs in this call. We got IB which confirmed that you needed to be long. Once you get this IB, you can trail your stop loss to this POC before the IB 344, and then we get another IB, then you can trail it to the lows of that IB. So as I was mentioning, 400 was our target, but I think we made this. We did go on to make a high of 399.65. So this definitely is telling you that you need to book profit. You've got a good RS signal at the new highs. So this is where you need to know where you need to book and where you need to hold. This kind of an IB bar is asking you to hold on to your position. If we had got a similar IB bar when we hit this 400, we would have held on to some part with the lows of that bar as our stop loss. But this is an RS bar and this has come at the target which we were expecting. So here clearly we need to book out most of our positions, and we can maybe hold some to cost in case we expect the upside to continue. So here you can see after that RS we went on to make a dip, and in the afternoon I'll again take back to the zone of VWAP. So when you have a strong open, the VWAP becomes a very important reference, both in the futures as well as in options. So they will give you multiple re-entry points, and maybe you will get small ranges, but they are they are trades of which have much more greater probability of being winners. So this was again that uh, dip to VWAP which was holding. We could not take off VWAP. And remember the 324 reference was there from the morning. So when the VWAP is holding, if you get even one clean signal of getting back into the long side trade, you can with a small stop loss. So here again you can see how the VWAP was held and we got that IB, and although we did not make new highs, we did go on to hit this 390 level. 384 we made a high. So this is how we can look for trades. And wh- why it is important to even keep booking profit is because, see, after this IB we have not got any more IB signals in this option. So which is important for we have the 10 bar rule. So any signal which comes is valid for 10 bars. So this IB which is here, in the next 10 bars, if we are not getting a fresh IB, it is better to book profits. And then if we get another IB, then we can maybe hold on with new reference as the latest reference of that IB as our trailing stop loss. So again into the close, we saw these RBs coming at right at VWAP. And although this is the closing bar, we don't consider the closing 2 3 bars from 315 to 330 as ideal signals, but it is still, the VWAP is still being held in this call. So if we look at the 30-minute order flow chart of the same option, you can see how 294 was the POC of the AP rate, and then how the 324, where we have zeros in the 30 minutes, was the NPOC on the 3-minute order flow. So these two will continue to be our reference for this weekly settlement. So as long as we are holding this 324 and 298, 294, we can look for this call to give us more upside. So this is how we can use the order flow charts of options and get some precise references, precise levels which we can mark and continue to hold for that week's settlement. So now let us have a look at the Bank Nifty futures before we wind up for today and see what kind of auction we had in Bank Nifty futures and what the order flow was showing us. So remember, Bank Nifty was a double distribution trend down profile on Friday. So we had very clear sell side references, but what happened into the close was, it will be more uh, clearly seen in the order flow. So I'll also have the, so we have the 15-minute order flow on the right and the market profile chart on the left. So I'll just quickly take you to the order flow chart of what happened on Friday. So this was the order flow chart of Friday where we had an AP rate selling. We had this zone of zeros which was not been taken out, and from the after the initial balance was over, we broke below VWAP and we went on to make range extensions to the downside. So the seller was definitely controlling this auction, but what happened was we also got big volumes on the lower side. So into the close we shifted the POC lower, so immediately it was known that the seller who had formed that double distribution trend day down was also booking profits. So this 51360 51383 I think was the POC of Friday, which would have been our reference, and this VWAP was definitely the level to watch in case the seller has to stay in control for today. The seller had left this extension handle here at 51570. So this VWAP and that extension handle were the references for today morning for the open. And because we had closed around the POC, which was 51387, that would have been our immediate reference. So at the open, we opened well above this POC. So it was a bullish chart. And what we did was we not only took out this VWAP, but we also took out this extension handle of 51570. So you can see how we have formed a nice green bar with the POC right in the middle. So this is very clearly telling us that the bias is on the upside and we are looking at uh, long side trades. And then what happened in the second 15-minute bar, we continued to probe higher, and in the probe higher, what we did was when we made an attempt to get into the selling tail, we got a big huge 3000 lot buyer at 51,800. So this was very clearly telling us this was an initiative buyer. So now when you see this kind of a buying happening in order flow, with that as the reference, we would definitely want to get into the auction. So we cannot uh, dominate the auction, but we can join the players who dominate the auction. So this is that kind of a player who can dominate the auction because of his size, and because not only the one time entry, but he will make sure that entry whenever it comes back, it will be defended. So that is what happened. We never broke this 51,800 for the rest of the day, and we continued to probe higher, and we saw some good profit booking by the buyers. We got this 690 at the highs when we made it at 10 o'clock, and then 1008 at the highs at 5188 51988. So our objective of this up move was this failed auction of 52032 from the ninth, and then this HVN of 52118 where the seller had come in. Seller had come in at the open on 7th and drove it down. Again in this chest on ninth, sellers came back in this G side range extension and confirmed a failed auction here. So this was a profit booking point by the buyers. Here on that day, we got initiative sell side signals on 7th, but here it was more of profit booking. So what we got was RS bars. So we have got this 2323 green, but still order flow is showing that as an RS for us. So this is still not a place where you would want to take a breakout trade because we have not got an IB bar. So if you for us to take a breakout trade in the market profile, range extension is necessary, and in the order flow we need an IB bar. So this is a very classic example of how just a LLT coming does not mean that you need to go long. You can compare that LLT with this LLT. This LLT was not tagged for the rest of the day, and this was part of a IB POC. And this POC, although it was on the POC was on the upper side, this POC was a valid reference and it was not hit. Whereas in this case, we never stayed above this POC. Immediately we remained below this, which was telling us that the upside may be capped and the Bank Nifty could look for a retracement. And what it did was it did make this low at 51880, but we've got zeros on the sell side. So same case as far as the VWAP, as long as the VWAP is held and we get some order flow responsive buying signal at VWAP, we can look for a re-entry into this for upside, at least for the initial balance high and the value area high. Because even in Bank Nifty, we were forming a P-shaped profile, and you can see how this dip gave us new highs, but again at the new highs, we are not getting fresh demand. So the order flow is showing us very clearly in this bar that the buyers are booking profit and we are not getting any fresh demand. So that is the reason you need to make sure that what what the setup is showing you today is not a trend day setup. In a trend day setup, what will happen? You make new range extensions. Those new range extensions will be backed by IB bars in the order flow, initiative buying bars, and you will see fresh demand adding, which was not the case today. So if you see when we hit these new highs, you have more of sellers. This is still an RS bar. So this is still telling us it is profit booking. And even when we uh, made these new highs into the close, it was more reds which were coming into the auction. So what we have done today is we have formed a P-shaped profile. We have a very small spike. We did make new highs into the close where we almost tagged this HVN of 52118, but the cot was not showing us uh, greens into the close. So we will be little bit wary about holding longs. We will have to see what the volumes are at the open. But yes, this if we remain above this POC of today, we can expect more upside in Bank Nifty. Whatever shorts or profit booking, if they were fresh shorts, these shorts may be forced to come out in case we sustain above this 52009 VPOC today. So this is where we have the order flow giving us uh, the ultimate confirmation when to remain in a trade, when to enter a trade, and when to come out of a trade. So when you see the POC of a bar which has a good big buyer holding, so you know that that will be your reference. And similarly, when you have a POC showing up as an RS, you know you need to book out of your longs and trail. So we have not got any fresh IB signal for the rest of the day until the last bar. This was a good green bar which closed at the highs, but here again the cot is not in sync. So let us see how we open tomorrow and what kind of volumes we get tomorrow. Today's order flow at the open was very clearly bullish. So we will need to see if we get a similar kind of a bar in the coming session. So that is it for today, guys. Let us see. We have had a good start to the week, wherein the buyers are trying to hold on to what they started last week. But we are in the selling zone, the supply zone of previous week. So we will need to see and watch at every step how the buyers are able to control and move on our references accordingly. So in case there are any queries, you can please feel free to post them, or you can even DM me on X. My IDs are Tutam Goel. And we have these charts and these order flow of options and futures running in the VTrender trading room, where we keep discussing these setups and we take live trades and we kind of hunt in packs. So in case you want to take your trading to another level, get serious about your trading, then you can look to join the VTrender room and get in sync with what we do on a daily basis. So thanks for joining in, guys. Signing off for now, and let's see how this week plays out. And we will definitely do a review of what we have discussed today in the reports as well as the in the next session we have. Thanks for joining in. Logging off.